Okay. The requirements are going to be the same thing for the group project. I met with Tuesday all but two groups. Group 11, Andrew, Rachel, nothing is working on your application, just breaks, so you have to work with them. Then similarly, group 12 did not make any updates, and there was nothing to pull. So it's your choice. So I kept saying, if I am willing to work with you, but if you don't do the work, then you're ultimately great, but more so the learning. But anyways, and there are other groups. Some groups are in very good shape. Rather than saying the bad, I'll say the good things. Let's see, group 5 is in very good shape. Group 6, I like the amount of time and effort you put in. It's probably the best project right now. Group 7 is in decent shape. Group 8, there are some good, some bad things. You'll have to push it through. Group 10, I think you've consistently done a decent job, so you just have the last step to try to push through. I think mostly you have it, all the functionality, so just set it up. Again, group 2 is also, I think, in decent shape, but you have to set up the flow better. Group 15, Vince and Carter, I think you've been doing consistently well. The other groups, I think group 1, group 3, well, group 4 has done well on the testing especially, and I just want to see a little bit of the workflow that you're working on to come together. But otherwise, I think you're in pretty decent shape. Group 14, you have to follow through with what we discussed. Similarly, group 1, we've had several discussions. So those things you have to, and then group 3, again, we've discussed several things, especially the reconciliation. You have to do that. I think I addressed, I guess the other group, which is sort of, I'm not entirely sure where you are, Jacob, Austin, Skylar. Sometimes there are some functionalities that you're working on that I need to see more clearly. Then maybe Tuesday you can show it to me, which other group. So this is sort of your last push. Tuesday again, so this will be, you'll have to send me the email giving specifics of what you have done, and then I will, on the 23rd, I will try to meet with every group. Okay, now as to where the other piece that I really want you to work on, and a couple of groups have told me that the cost diagrams have to be updated. I want you to update it to reflect where you stand with your MVC app now. If you have made changes as you've gone along, you typically want to keep those two in sync. If they go too far away, then you don't have a big picture view of what your system is. And the cost diagram is supposed to represent that. So you need to update it so that those two are converging. Okay, that's the system's implementation is very hard. So you have to keep one of the things is how much you're committed to it. Dane had done discussion last night for Bootstrap, the UI aspects, which I've recorded, so you could refer to that. As far as the application, what we are going to look at today, we'll continue with something that we started last class, which is the we were working on UI components, which is we initially were looking at nested DLLs, but then I said we will create like these list blocks, or it's basically a set of selections that you're doing, checkbox selections, and then how you can sort of build it up like a shopping cart type situation, and keeping the selections alive through using a session. So that's one piece that I want to work on or discuss. Need to make sure. For some reason I keep back and forth. Okay. Then what do you think this is here? Did anyone try this out? No? Okay. So this is, I'll try to get to this. I don't know if I'll have time today, but if you can see that for different course, essentially these are course offerings, and this tracks the, so the top line, as you can see, tracks the capacity. The bottom line is the enrollment. So, so it gives you for each of the course offerings which were at capacity and which so on. And this is obviously it takes it from the database. So if it's dynamic data, so if I were to change this, this will change as well. So I'm going to, as I said, try to introduce it. If not, if I don't get to it during the class, I'll try to, or at least introduce the main concepts so that you can start incorporating it. There are different types of charts. This is just one of them, and you can obviously sort of not just have it horizontally, or well, you can sort of split up the screen vertically and have segments for like a dashboard-like situation. So this could potentially be compressed. And I think you could set it up where you can scroll through further. But anyway, so these are some things you can explore. Dane, as I said, has discussed how you could use Bootstrap to set up the, so those of you who don't like this black background, he has shown a way to sort of change that. Anyway, so let me get into discussing the parts where we were in the last class, and that was we were trying to look at having a drop down which populates using JavaScript and jQuery. So when we went to that, let's see where you could call it manual. And this was selected list. Okay, so this is where we were in the last class. If you selected any department, it basically gives you a list of courses to select in the form of checkboxes, and then on the right side you want to show the courses that have actually been selected. Currently, of course, it's just showing all of the courses and not just the selected ones. So one other issue with this, initially when we first came to this page, you can see that you don't have, it says MIS, but nothing shows up. So this entire action here is initiated on the browser side. So, and what is the trigger to populate these checkboxes? The change in this drop-down. So one simple thing, if you want to, currently if the user is seeing MIS and not seeing anything here, to change that, let's see, where is my manual department? So I'm in selected list. Okay, I was going to look at I'm going to close out some of these other windows, so hopefully that, so what I was trying to emphasize was that you have your class diagram. Hopefully it should be corresponding fairly closely to your MVC app. Otherwise, obviously, it's not serving any purpose. I was going to discuss this, but I'll close this out. I won't have time to get into that. Okay, so this was where we were, and so what's the simplest way to not give our focus right now is making the user experience a better one, right? We are focusing on some UI aspects. There are some conceptual pieces too, but what would make this so the user is not seeing anything to select, MIS is showing up. What's a simple solution to this? Okay, let's do that. So we will, between the select tags, open, close, bring in the optional option value. I guess I don't know if I can give 0 or let's see. I don't want this to. We are not checking for null values, so I'll give it a 0, and then say none. So let's see what happens here. So okay, so it's none and nothing shows up. So if I change it to so this is a slightly better user that you're basically not misinterpreting what's showing up initially to the user. So, okay, so there none has been selected, so none of the forces are showing up. Okay, so what's the next step? We want to take the forces that are being selected, like these, and then instead of search, it should be select here. So this value for the button should be select. So if they select it, we want it to go. Let's see, where are we going with this? If it's selected, where would we go? Where does the submit button take us? Over here, selected list result. And the reason I created it as a separate, as a different method name, so if we go to the controller, we don't have controller open. On Tuesday, I will get into some of the unit testing concepts, and I might have Nate, you were explaining some things to me, so what you did, I might have you come up and explain. That's it. So anyway, so coming back to this, let's see. This course offering controller obviously has become overloaded. There's too much functionality that is here. Ideally, we should refactor it and see some of the functionality doesn't really belong here. Let's see. I actually have it in department, I think. I put it in department because it starts from some manual departments. We are selecting the drop down of department and going so, and this is the JSON. You should be familiar or comfortable with this. We'll revisit it. So this is where we are with the drop down. And some of you were exploring sorting. So if I want to sort the drop down, what should I do? Yeah, order by, and you have order by descending if you want to go in the opposite direction. So order by, and then I can use the lambda expression, D for a lowercase. Caps lock this on. So D dot department name. And then to list. Okay, so that helps this become, especially if it's a longer list. One of the other options for UI that I hope some of you are exploring it, you had wanted to have a search box. What does Google call it? Where you have it auto complete, so it shows up. So that's another. It's basically the same concept using JavaScript. So if you want to explore, I'll try to do that on Tuesday. Anyway, so this is if you want to order a longer list of drop-down options. And we said we are going to a method called, it's not this, it's going to be by search. So this is the method I want to create called selected list result. Okay, so that's going to be, I'm going to try to do this. I have to try to complete. So, so selected list result. Pardon? This is going to be a post. So I already have it? Okay. Did we start discussing it last class? A little bit, yeah, we just started. Okay, thank you. So this is the one. The reason we are calling it by a different name, what's the obvious reason that I couldn't call this by the same name as the get method? It's not sufficient that they are get and post. What else needs to be different if I was to want to use the same name for the method? Well, the signature, so which means signature means the return type and the parameters. So if the parameters are exactly the same, I cannot repeat this. So that's why I've used a different name for this method. And you know why I'm using view data again? So this is actually, so I'm going back to that same view, so which has to be populated with the drop downs. And one thing, if you have several drop downs that you're using, you can create a separate method that has the drop downs that you can call here. Yeah, the reason I'm saying is the first time the view was sorted departments, through this it is unsorted. So you're giving the user two different views. So if you want to keep it consistent, we'll have to do it again. But if you want to avoid doing it multiple times, you can just have a separate method that has all of this, which you call. Okay, so okay, so this actually is something that we want at the very end, just before we return the view. Okay, now if I don't have parameters, how do I collect the data? There are a couple of ways of doing it. I've been experimenting with Core 2.0, and Microsoft, I think, has now provided you can send it as a model through as a parameter. You can send it the other way that you can send it is through what's called the request. So the request method or the request object sends a request to the post method saying, I want this to be done. So you can either use the body or, in this case, the form, because it's being sent through the form. So you can look inside this form object for the values. So in this case, what are we looking for? The values that are being sent over. What are the values that are being selected and sent? Where are they? They are in, okay, let's see, right? Okay, right here. Okay, we said course target, but that's an empty div. It's an ID. So what is populating it? We are populating it through the, where is our, what did we do last class? All the JavaScript, we put it under, do you remember where it is? Under the root, www root, the JS JavaScript. And then if you go into checkbox list, so this tells you how what is the name we are giving for the checkbox, and we are calling it courses. Okay. So when we look inside the form, we are looking for an object called courses lowercase c. This is going to be case sensitive, and this brings in. It's not going to bring in one value. It brings in list of values, whichever courses the user has selected. So you can get a list. It's going to be a list of it's a list of string values. So so on the left side, when I receive it, I'm going to say a list of string values, and I'll say selected courses is the name of the variable that retrieves it. Okay, so so this is the list of selected courses. It's brought over basically the IDs of the courses. Now, what I can do is to go through each of these string values. I obviously need to convert it into integers and then bring over the objects, right? So what I can do, there are a couple of things I can do. So one thing is I want to make it into a list of integers. Okay, so I'll say so I called it selected courses. I'll just make it clear that this is a set of string values. I'll just use underscore, let's say string. The reason I'm doing it is because I need a list of integer values for the selected courses. Why do I need a set of integer values? Because when I go and collect the courses from the database, what are the course IDs? They are integers, right? So I need to make that conversion. So I will actually go through, do this for each of the string objects. Just call it each string in selected courses that came in as strings. I'm just going to convert and add it to this selected courses dot add. How do I convert each string to an integer? Convert dot to int 32 or int to int 32. That's the standard integer size. There's a larger one, 16, and smaller, 64. So basically, to get a list of values, we get it as strings. We don't have an option of getting it as integers, so we need to then make the conversion. And once we have made the conversion, then we can go in and get the list of courses. Okay, so right now we said course list database dot courses, and we just got the entire list of courses. So instead of doing that, I'm going to initially just create an empty course list. So I will say this is the selected course list, and initially I'll just well, I guess I could just kind of bring it down. I'll create it as a new list of courses. Now this is going to generate an error down here. So I'm basically at this point creating an empty course list. Why am I saying it's an empty list? I don't want to get the entire set from the database, right? What do I want to get? Only the ones that the user has selected, right? So which means over here, instead of calling it course list, I'm going to change it to selected course list. Okay. Now, how do I get that selected course list? So I have my list of selected courses. So I'm going to do this for each, and each object inside of my selected courses. This is selected courses is a list of integers, right? So each object is a int. I'll just say each course. And what do I do with this? Or it's essentially each course. If you want to make it clear, it's each course ID. So I want to go into the database and get database dot. What do I want to do? I want to go into the database and get that particular object, right? I want to find it. So how do I find that? Database dot. Which table in the database has this? Courses. Courses dot find, and I can find it using the course ID. This is the simplest way to get each course. And I need to get one course at a time because I don't know which courses the user has selected. So how do I? So this gives me one course at a time, right? So what do I need to do if I get one course at a time? I need to add it to this list over here, right? So what do I do? So this is, I can either do it in 2 steps or 1 step. I could say this is so I can say this. So this will be a 2-step process. Okay, so which means I get each course, and then I'll say this empty list, selected course list. I add one course at a time. Okay, and so do you understand the logic here? So first I get the string values that have been selected in the checkbox. I convert it into integers because those are the IDs, right? And then how do I know they are the IDs? What tells me that they are the IDs? Over here in the checkbox is what's the value? Course ID, right? Okay. So that in turn was generated by our query, which set up the JSON. So we are now having a list of courses that the user has selected that we are sending back to the view. Okay. So let's run this and see. First, build it. Anytime you have some segment of code, try to build the solution to make sure there are no build errors. And once that's done, you can run it. I'm going to actually not, by now you know how not to try to repopulate, right? What do you need to do? If you go into program, I guess it's still trying to build. So if you comment this out, it reduces going to the initializer. But if you have not changed any of the data, it actually will not run as much code. Okay, so let me run this now. So what am I expecting now? What should happen if everything works? Well, if you're working for a fancy consulting company, this is what you need to do, right? Show something fancy on the front of the screen, because otherwise, however much work you do behind the scenes, they won't give you any credit for it. So that's why this front page should be there, even if you don't do anything at all. So I guess the lesson for you is on this project, do something fancy on the front page. Maybe you'll impress me. Okay, so let's come to this. Okay, so we are selecting, let's say, systems analysis, database management. What is it that this tells you? Based on what we discussed, our departments are in alphabetical order. So how do you get the selected courses in alphabetical order? Pardon? Where? Where is it? Order by is the simple answer. The more interesting answer here is, where is the order by? Where is this data coming from? How many of you know the answer to that? Okay, Rob?
You put the order by and select the list result for the action.
No, it's not an action. How many of you know the answer to that? Where is this coming from? It's okay. We get it in the inside of the JavaScript, which uses jQuery. We are building it up, but this isn't the. So this is the intermediate source of the data, which is the original source. No, it's not a view model. It is this, the JSON query, right? It's over here that you're generating. And I want you to get used to this. This is very much like SQL, right? So this is a very useful query for drop-downs, and especially for anything related to the JSON conversion. Why is it so useful? It allows you to generate a different set of columns that you want to select. Okay, so how do you sort this? You have to say dot order by, and then this is C dot course name. Okay. So I'll just leave it. Obviously, it probably won't take effect until I run it again. But I want you to be aware of where the connections are made. Otherwise, okay, let's see. I don't think, as I said, it's not going to take effect immediately. I'll select two of these. Okay, systems analysis, database management. Select it. Okay, so what happened? So this list here is the one that you actually selected. So I'll go back in and select. Well, I like some professors in accounting, but I don't particularly like accounting. But anyways, I'll select one. The reason that I don't like accounting is that it's very structured. It's almost the opposite of, you have no freedom to do anything. Well, I guess in MIS I don't know if you have too much freedom, but anyways. So what happened now? You didn't add it, it just got you the, so this is where it's like the shopping cart situation. So you're selecting items, but if you were the shopper, you will be very upset that the previous selections disappeared. So what we need to do is to hold this, these values. Now we looked at session variables earlier. We did it first in 353. Then we looked at it even here in MVC. Do you remember where you looked at session variables? When you were assigning, let's see, this is find qualified instructors. Okay, what were we doing here? So whichever course offering the department chair had selected, we said we had to hold on to it. Do you remember that? So that was an integer. So we could, so if it's an integer or a single string value, you can do this. Now, we are in a more complex situation. Why is it that we are in a more complex situation now? It's a list. Okay, so a list, you cannot just say create a session, and so you have to do, you have to set up. So if you go to your eCampus, I've set this up. If I had you do it from, I would have had you do it from scratch, but I don't have the time. I was also going to do this Morris chart. There are some. These are libraries. One of the reasons that these are doing as much as they are is because it's through these libraries that we're accessing. Also set up files for Dane's Bootstrap demo. And so this is called a session extension. When I put it on this directly, it sort of got badly unformatted, so I put a text file as well. So if you open session extensions.txt, it's basically going to be using that JSON converter. Okay, so what we want to do is to create the file. I'm just going to call it session extensions.cs. So this is going to be the content. I'll show you where to create this file. Yes. Yeah.
For the request.form, the string inside of it is based on what?
The string, where is that?
It's under the selected list.
Right here. This string, this name.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the name. So it is the name of the checkbox or whatever object you're generating has a name, and the name. Does anyone remember my mentioning where the name is? It's in the JavaScript file, because the JavaScript is what generates these checkboxes, and as we are generating the code for the checkbox, we are giving a name here. Okay, so this is the name that goes for each, and so whatever gets selected comes as a list of strings. Okay, you understand that? Yes? No? Okay, that's the point of trying to go through this. So please. So if you are wanting to apply it on your project, hopefully you will. I'll show you where this goes first, so that we can know where to copy that segment of code, and then I'll sort of explain what's in that. If we went through the entire process of building from scratch, it will take too long. So it goes under services. Do you remember the last time we came to services for email validation? So we are going to, so this is considered, a session extension is considered a service. So I'm going to add this class, and I'm going to call this as session extensions. So just so that you can see this. Session extensions, plural. Hopefully you can see 4 plus 4. So this is the name that I'm going to give the class, or the file name, session extensions, because I'm going to give different, session extensions.cs is the name of the class. and I don't know if it uses that as a convention. I need to verify that. So if you are using sessions, please put it under, well, the class name itself is going to be slightly different because this is an extension. I'm naming the file. So the class is going to be, and I will verify whether it makes a difference. This is an extension for selected courses. Why do I make it specific to selected courses? What if you are having another class which needs to keep track of some other session? Right? If you have a difference, so that's why I didn't just call it session extensions, but selected courses extensions. So copy this entire segment. It's a static class. So whenever something is a static class, what does that mean? You cannot create objects of that class. So basically, it's just used directly as is with the method. So there's a get and a set method. So let's see, iSession is not recognized, so you would have to bring in a reference, ASP.NET Core, HTTP. It's obviously it keeps the session alive. So the other is this JSON convert. We brought in this Newton soft JSON, if you remember. This is through, we brought it in through that the package, NuGet package. So okay, so you have to bring those two in. And let me just quickly explain what's in here. Each of these sessions needs to have a session key. So if you have two different sessions, so let's say something for courses and another for students, you would have to have two different keys, and in which case you would create two different static classes. Okay. In this case, I'm just using one session, and so I have one key, and you have to a get and a set method. Okay. So what is the get doing? It's basically retrieving a list of integers. Okay, and why is it having to do the conversion? What .NET Core is doing behind the scenes, the only way it's saying I'm going to store anything other than an integer or a string is as JSON. Okay, so one of the things that I'm hoping that you start getting a little familiar with is that JSON format. You saw that, right, a couple of times. So just because that's how the data is getting stored, and then it does the conversion back to a list of integers or whatever type of object, list of courses, whatever you store it as. And the other direction goes via setting. It means that you are sending the value to the section, and what's it doing? It's taking the list of integers that we are providing and converting it into JSON, right? I'll ask you a question on this on the exam, so that way you don't you pay attention and do it. So make sure you understand unit testing. I'm going to ask you a question on that. Make sure you understand this how sessions are set up, because these things you need to sort of understand that if you want to implement some of the concepts we are going through. And I'm hoping on your projects you will try these out. Okay, coming back to, so now we have a means of storing the session. So now let's come in and see how we are going to do it. Okay, so this, you don't have to memorize this stuff. You can use this template. What would you have to change? If you had something other than integers, it would be a list of whatever else, right? So strings, and then you would have to change that. That's the main thing you would change. You might want to change the name that you're giving the session key. In this case, it's a selected courses list. You might give it something else. Okay. So other than that, you can just use it as this. It's a template. Just understand that it's whatever your data type gets converted to JSON for when it's stored, and then it has to be retrieved back from JSON back to your data type. Okay. Now let's get back into the selected list result and see how we use this. Okay. Okay, it has to be a quick question because I have to move. What's that? What? Okay. Yeah. Well, we are setting it. We are basically it's a set method for the session, which is if you look at all the methods that the session object has, the main thing is inside of that method there is this. What it's doing is it's called name value pairs. Okay, what is a name value pair? This is where 352 should have discussed name value pairs. So anytime something is stored, how will you retrieve something? You need to know the name, right? So you provide the name. So it's basically saying you're setting it as a string for the name, but the value itself is in what format? JSON, right? So ultimately, the value of this complex object is getting stored as JSON. Okay. So this is a standard method that's associated with the session, but the crucial part is the JSON conversion. Okay. So let's come back to this. So what we are wanting to do is store in the session. So let's see. We need to revisit so that I can focus now on this where we accumulate the sessions. So they're going to be, the first thing is we need to, let's see, where do we set up the session? Okay, I'm going to set up a list. So this is the selected list. When we say selected list, it is what is currently selected, right? So you can again think of it like a shopping cart. So if I'm selecting 2 items, it is those 2 items. Now, those 2 items have to be added on to the previous 3, 4, 5 other items. So I'm going to set up another list of courses, which I'm calling, well, in this case, it's a list of integers. So I'm going to call this list, let's see, do I want it before or after? So I want it after I get so where do I have my integers? So right here, so selected courses. So I'm going to set up another list of integers, okay? And I'm going to call this all selected courses. So this is selected course list, selected courses. So I'm going to change this from this first, a better name would be, instead of just saying selected courses, I'm going to change it to current selected courses. So if I change this here, what's the cleanest way of changing everywhere? Go in here, rename. So can you see why this is better called current? Because it is this cycle. And this one refers to to all the selections, okay? So if I'm going to set this up, so this one, I will not say new list because it's the list that I am getting from the session, okay? So the way I get it from the session is HTTP context dot, it's a session, so session dot, what type of method is this? I am retrieving it, so it's a get. So it should be getting me the get selected courses. Let's see. If it's not recognizing, let's see what's it. So it's inside of, remember this class is inside the services folder, right? So I have a using statement. So do you understand what this is doing? We are using the get method from what Leon was asking, that session. From inside of it, we are retrieving. So it's going to retrieve it as a list that's already. So what we are saying is, so we want to get the previously existing list, and what do we want to do to this previously existing list? This list should. This is the previously existing list. This is the currently selected list. So what should happen to this? We need to add the currently selected list to the entire list from earlier. So how do we do that? All selected courses, which is the list of integers, we can add, but we are adding what? Is it one at a time? Adding a range, multiple of them. So adding, what are we? Current selected courses. Okay, does this make sense? Yes? Okay, so this is now, so what it has done is it's taken whatever we have currently selected, so it pulled out what we had accumulated, added the current selection. So what's the next thing we need to do? So we have the storage location, which is the session. We took whatever was there, added to it, and then what would you do to make this process actually work? When you take it back from there, add something to it, what should you do? Put the added part, with the added part back into that location, right? So what do you do there? So what we said, getting the get method, so now what's the opposite of the get method? The post in this case will get and post, but inside of a class it is the set, right? So that's what we called it inside. We go into the session, we have the get and the set where we send this in. Okay, so that's what we are wanting to do, and we set it up with HTTP context dot session dot, and since we already have a reference to it, if you use the dot notation, you'll get the set. And we are sending, what are we setting or sending? All selected courses. So all selected courses goes back. So this is how we accumulate the shopping cart, okay? And then what are we wanting to find? The courses, do we only want what is in the current list? We want what is in the entire list. So we need to change this from current to, okay, and so this will get us the selected course list, the entire selected from the database. Okay, so now let me run this. I should rebuild it now. You understand what we are doing, right? Okay. So it is a little bit more complicated when you want to keep accumulating, and that's the concept I wanted you to get. Okay, so if I run this now, and so this is, so even when you're working on your project, try to build it step by step so that you see what's happening. I'm going to close this. Close this. Okay. Okay, so if I go down here and I select, well, actually, I used to work with databases a lot. I'm not sure how well I like analysis. Maybe I don't like 353 because I no longer teach it. So I'll select this, and so I have my database management systems analysis. From next semester or next year, you don't have to take the accounting course, but now you have to. So select one of these. Okay. So is it working? Yes, it is working. Everything is fine now. You think so? Okay, let's see. I go back in here, and then, well, I really don't want to, well, I'm revisiting this. I don't want to take this. And then if I say, select database management again, I've added it twice. So how do I prevent adding it twice? In this context, so in some other context, you might deal with it in a different way. But here, what I want to do is I want to prevent the same course getting added twice. So what's the best way of doing that? So let's go back in. There are probably at least a couple of different ways. I have one way here. Let's see. What I did was. So where is my list of all selected? Right here. This is my list, the integer list of all selected courses. So what I'm going to do is, one of the things so if you say, if you're going through the current list, you could look at the current list in all. The issue is if you're searching through a list and you try to remove items from that list, you cannot change a list as you're searching through it. So what we have to do is search through the bigger list and see if it's in the smaller list. So what I'm going to do is, so if the item is, so basically before I add the current selected list to the entire list of all courses, I want to see which I want to remove from this list. And for that, I'm going to do a for each. So for each, I'm going to look inside the larger list, and the larger list will be all selected courses. So I'm going to take each item or inside of it, each course ID, each item inside this, and each item inside is what the data type is, an int, okay? Okay, and so what I want to do here is I want to compare if this current list contains this particular item. Okay, if the current list contains this particular item, what do I want to do? From this current list, I want to I want to remove it because I don't want, if I keep it, then it duplicates it. So I want to remove each item, that particular item that matches I want to remove. Okay. And you cannot, one of the things I told you is you cannot remove it from the list that you're searching because you cannot mutate the search list. It will complain saying you are destroying the list that I'm actually looking at. So what am I instead mutating or changing is the other list. Okay. So this for each keeps going through. Okay. So if I run this now, so you can see there are multiple steps that you have to think through. That's why I wanted to discuss this particular application or functionality. So one of the things you have to remember is we are not just coding, we are designing and connecting the logical pieces. It's like problem solving. So it's not just coding. So if we select a couple of these, so this actually kept so if I go back, let's see if I can go back and restart. Actually, how do I clear this now? So there should be some option to clear. Let's see if I go back. I think it's going to be kept in the session until I log out. So there is, what's it doing is, did it remove it or what did it do? If I try to add something in, okay, I have to rerun because I have a lot of code that let me just rerun this. Okay, I have about 5 minutes left. That's interesting. It's not clearing the session, so I have to find a way to clear this session. It's just getting me the entire list of courses.
Yeah, the first thing will show you all the courses. Yeah, and then until
okay. Until we select.
Yeah.
Why would it get the list of all the courses? Oh, okay. 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 So we are so to prevent this from giving an error, we are passing the entire course list. Okay. So how do we avoid that from happening? So which means if you go to the view, select it. So when we are displaying this, we have to have an if statement. What's that if statement? Okay, so this selected courses, so we have to do an if statement here. If when when do we want to, so if this model is if it is null, or what's the other if statement? Or it is well, there is the model dot count. If this is 0, we then know that we have nothing to display. Right.
That was in the same bracket, like or
Oh, yeah, this one we have to close it here. So we have this is one condition, and the other condition here. And then if this is the case, we'll just say no courses, something like no courses selected or something to that effect. And then if it else, so this has to go someplace, some tag, I guess, a label. I'll just say label. So it wants a container for this text. It doesn't want it to be standing freely. Guess I could just do this, else. Okay, so if I were to run this, so now I wouldn't, earlier, the reason we were sending it from the first get method was because that was giving us an error, right? So now I can basically remove, I don't have to send this in from the get method. There is no point sending the entire course list in, right? So I can actually get rid of this. Okay, so now if I were to run this, it won't populate any of the courses. Initially, it will only start populating after I start selecting. Okay, so this is, if you have to format it better, it's so if I select, okay, and then, okay, let's see this, and then I go back and select this, doesn't get added in. Okay, so we've gone through a fairly in my view, an interesting workflow. So think about it. See if something like this applies to your project. The other thing is, what if the user doesn't want one of these courses? What should you do? You need to have a delete option for each of them. And finally, you should have another button here, which is a submit button, so that it goes into the database for storage. Okay, so think about it. I will add on a couple of other options, and I think I might also discuss the Morris charts in a video so that you can have access to it. Pardon? Yeah, I'll have office hours today.
All right, I just have one quick question. So when I go and click on one of these, my checkbox is not popped up.
Okay, so that means that you have to check your JSON.
Okay.
So JSON. So first check the JSON is generating. So you know how to check the JSON directly, right? Okay, so you can just go get courses. So this gives the JSON. So that's the first step. You need to know that the JSON data is getting generated, right? If that is getting generated, okay. So look at that method, and it's actually a very simple. Right here, it's basically using a slightly different notation or syntax, but it's more SQL-like. And then you take that data and you have to convert it into JSON. So instead of it just being a list of whatever courses, it converts it into this format here. So that's one of the harder things with JavaScript is testing. So that's why you have to this is how I have started testing it, is one step at a time. So do I see this working by checking here? If this works, then
So my problem would be here, not in the JSON.
no, yeah, because you are not, if you did this, get courses and sent it an ID, and it didn't generate anything,
Okay.
then it means that that method is not working.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the issue is this one is for just to give a label to say that nothing was selected. The else is you're going through the entire table, right? So this entire table you're building based off of there being some data.
Yeah, mine is not writing the ending.
Yeah, so there are only there are only two sets of brackets here. One is for this. You have to make sure you have the @if, and then obviously these parentheses have to be matched up.
Mine is like not saying that my things at the bottom that she did at the form are like
The biggest problem is
Well, there is this div here.
crazy idea.
okay.
No, there's like a tutorial.
So you just have to go, actually, if you go over there, highlight, it will actually show you, I think, which one it's related to. It sort of gives you a highlight in the background. Did you contact Keith?
Yeah, he didn't respond. He didn't respond.
He didn't respond? Okay.
Maybe he doesn't know who.
Well, didn't I send it to both of you? I think I
Did he
sent.
respond to you?
No, but he said, one thing he had said was he was looking for graduates with some experience, so I don't know how strict the requirement that is. The other is he graduated in 2004 and he's been with Deloitte since 2005. So he's now become a senior manager, which means he's just one level below I think the highest level you can go to. So he's managing literally, I think, hundreds of people. The thing is to just follow up with them to see is it. Yeah, you sent your resume, right? Okay, so just to one of the things that Preston had said was that there might be value in teaching SharePoint in Salesforce, but the problem is it is very, very specific to Salesforce. I don't know if it translates like C# and MVC are open enough that you can take this into other environments. So